We are rolling. We're good to go.
Well, I've been asked to tell a few stories about my hometown of Cahersiveen, South Kerry, Ireland. The best story I can remember is that which was told to me by my late brother Oni. His friend, school friend, was a guy by the name of Paddy Mangan. They both left secondary school. My brother Oni got a job with the Kerry County Council as a clerical officer. Paddy Mangan got nothing, other than the fact his father had a chemist shop on the main street, and the father pointed out to him that there was an ad in the paper, in the Irish Independent and the Irish Press, where the government of Ireland were going to buy 4 boats to protect the 20-mile radius around the whole of Ireland, to stop the Spanish trawlers, the French trawlers, and even the Russian trawlers coming into our waters, taking our fish and taking the money and the food from the fishermen of the whole of Ireland. It was suggested to him by his dad that he should apply for a job, so he sent off an application asking for a job as a crew member of one of these 4 boats that Ireland had intended to buy. He interviewed in Dublin. Lo and behold, he was made a crew member. What he didn't know at the time was the 4 boats were christened after trees. One was the Irish elm, one was the Irish oak, one was the Irish maple, and one was the Irish, I think it was birch. He went on board the elm as a crew member, and it was noted by the captain of the elm at the time that Mangan was a bit of a smart man, a clever young fella. So he suggested to him that he apply for membership of the Nautical College in Dublin and study navigation and any other kind of qualification that would help him on the way to be an academic, if you like. So Paddy, being rather clever, his father was a qualified chemist, he accepted the offer that he was made. Spent 3 years in the college, came out of there as a fully navigational officer, other qualifications which I cannot recall, and he became a deputy captain. Eventually, the captain of the elm had to retire, and Paddy Mangan, at a very young age, was invited to be captain of the elm in Ireland. So you had the 4 boats. They covered north, east, south, and west around the whole coast of Ireland. And after being 3 years a captain of the elm, he was told by the government that he was selected to go to Argentina in South America because the Argentinian government had contacted the Irish government, and they said they were sending their corvette to Ireland on a courtesy mission, and they would like somebody from Ireland to return their compliment and send a boat to Argentina. The decision was made that it would be Paddy Mangan, Captain Paddy Mangan of the Irish elm, would go to Argentina. He arrived in Argentina on board with his crew, spent 4 weeks there, and one of the reasons that he was asked to go was because he was fluent in Spanish and fluent in French. Now, I don't know what language they had in Argentina, but anyway, Paddy Mangan was selected. When his trip was over, the Argentinian government, they presented him with a present, and he had already been given a present by the Irish government to give to the Argentinian government. And what they gave to Paddy Mangan for his return to Ireland was a parrot. the most beautiful coloured parrot any man had ever seen in his life. He was caged in a very large cage, and he had the colours of the rainbow on his plumage. Mangan arrives back in Ireland with the parrot. The government didn't want the parrot. Nobody wanted the parrot, so Paddy Mangan had the parrot. He couldn't take the parrot home to Carsiveen in the car, so he had to hire a pickup truck. He hired a pickup truck anyway and put the big parrot in the cage, arrived in Carsiveen and arrived at my brother Owen's house. And Owen was delighted to see him, so was I, so was lots of people, because money was scarce at the time and he was loaded. He liked to drink, so did we all. He explained to Owen that he had a parrot outside in the back of the truck and he just didn't want the parrot. So Owen and himself discussed the matter and they decided they would ask Johnny Bone Curran, nicknamed Bonner, who had a pub right opposite the O'Connell Memorial Church. They thought they could lumber Bonner with the parrot. Bonner lived with his mother, just the two of them, so they decided they'd select Bonner's as their pub while Mangan was in Carsiveen. That night, Owen and Paddy arrived in Bonner's, invited Bonner to join them for drinks. So after a good hour or two, enjoying themselves, Owen suggested to Bonner that wouldn't it be nice if he gave a present to his mother of a parrot. So Bonner was perplexed. He said, a parrot. So Paddy Mangan intervened. He said, Johnny, he said, I brought a parrot all the way from Argentina, and the only person I could think of whom I should give this parrot to was your mother. Anyway, Bonner wanted to see the parrot, so they brought the parrot into Bonner's pub. Next to the bar, he had a tap room, quite a large room. Brought the caged parrot into the tap room, placed it on the table, showed him to Bonner. Now this parrot had a curtain around half of the cage because in Argentina, all birds had to have what they called a siesta. Because of the heat and the hot country, always from 12 until 3, the curtain was surrounded and the parrot had to sleep. So it was explained all to Bonner, so he invited the mother to come out of the kitchen, even though she was really wheelchair bound. They got her out, she looked at the parrot, oh, she said, Johnny, she said, I love the bird, I love that bird. Can we have him, Paddy? I brought him all the way from Argentina for you, Mrs. Curran. So Bonner said, we'll have the parrot. So there's the parrot. Paddy is so delighted to get rid of the parrot. Now remember, as I said to you, this parrot was a very, very large parrot. He had plumage better than the rainbow. He had every colour ever under the sun. So then Paddy explained to Bonner what to feed a parrot. Curtain drawn 12 until 3 every day. Parrot needed siesta. Only winked at Paddy. Paddy winked back at Oni. That's quite happy. They stayed there till about 3 o'clock in the morning, all enjoying themselves, and then up they go home. Bonner's got the parrot now. Bonner's the owner of the parrot. Word was sent out that Bonner has the parrot. There was people coming from all over South Kerry having a look at this famous parrot. But one thing the parrot didn't do, unfortunately, as Paddy had explained to Bonner, he said, I don't know why, but he said, this parrot does not speak. So Bonner was a bit disappointed. He said, well, all parrots speak. But he said, don't ask me why this parrot doesn't speak. So anyway, Bonner accepted the parrot on the basis that he had a beautiful parrot that didn't speak. So this went on for about 6 or 8 months anyway. Bonner came in at 3 o'clock to open the curtains, and the boys were able to admire the parrot. The parrot looked at Daniel, looked at Dennis. This went on for ages. About a year went by, and on a Friday, Barnard did a dinner for his mother and himself. Now she sat in the chair in the kitchen. He brought in, did the cooking, brought in her meat, or somebody had brought in some fish. So he cooked the fish, gave it to the mother, potatoes, the lot, had to go out into the bar. And about an hour later, or maybe half an hour, he heard a crash inside in the kitchen. He's outside in the bar. He went in. The chair was overturned, and there was the mother lying on the floor, eyes closed. He got the shock of his life, bent down, mother, 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 dead to the world. He was in shock. O'Connell Memorial Church, directly across the road from his house, actually the presbytery, which was on the grounds of the church, ran out front door, across to the Poor Sheen. They called it the Canon's Poor Sheen. Side gate, in the side gate, up to the presbytery door, rang the bell. The housekeeper, a lady by the name of Noreen, comes out, and Barnard said, "Get the priest, please get the priest, get the canon." He said, "My mother is dead, she's over, she's knocked out, she's out on the floor, she's dead to the world." So the priest happened to be on the phone in the hallway, put the phone down. He said, "Mr. Curran," oh, he said, "come quickly, Canon, come quickly. My mother," he said, "is dead. She's dead. Come quickly." So I'll be straight over. He got whatever accoutrements he needed because he thought he would have to give the last blessing to Barnard's mother. Over he goes anyway. Barnard takes him straight into the kitchen, the chair upturned, Mrs. Curran lying on the floor. And he said to Johnny, well, he said, "Go out, look after your customers," because Barnard was agitated. Barnard goes out, he closes the door, goes on his knees, looks at the woman, she's lying, eyes closed, unconscious. So after about 15 minutes, he opens the door, goes out into the hallway, not where Barnard was, and he said, "Johnny," he said, "Mr. Curran," he said, "nothing wrong," he said, "I put your mother back in her chair." He said, "Can I ask you," he said, "what did you give her for dinner?" So Barnard said, "She had a bit of salmon, peas and potatoes." And he said, "That's what's happened," he said. "You poisoned your mother. You gave her food poisoning. Nothing wrong with your mom." He said, "Oh, thank God," says Barnard. So then he said, "Mr. Curran," he said, "I believe," he said, "you've got a beautiful parrot." Yeah, he said, "I have. I got him about here. Can I see him?" No, Barnard said, "You can't." He said, "He's having his siesta. Come back after 3 o'clock and you can see him." So, well, the canon said, "Well, I am a busy man." He said, "Just couldn't have a quick look." He said, "No, you can't. Simply because," he said, "he has his siesta from 12 until 3, the curtains are closed, you can't see him. Come back some other time, and I thank you for doing what you could." Barnard goes in, the mother was fine. Anyway, about a week later, the canon decided, well, it's not 3 o'clock now, it's 4 o'clock. So he decided anyway, and he goes to Barnard and said, "Mr. Curran," he said, "is it possible for me to see the parrot?" "Oh, 4 o'clock. Oh, of course you can, Canon. Of course you can. Come in. So he takes him into the tap room. There's Danny on one side and Dennis on the other side, and the two boys with their arms closed and they're drinking their pints. And there's the parrot eating the perch. Now the parrot had a habit. Once a person came into the tap room, he'd move along the end of the perch and he'd look up at you like that, trying to size you up. So anyway, the canon is there looking at the parrot. And he turns around, he said, "Mr. Curran," he said, "oh," he said, "it's beautiful. Can I just get a bit closer?" He said, "Can I go closer?" "Certainly," he said, "Barnard, do what you like, go as close as you like." So the canon decided anyway, he'd go on his knees, went to the table and put his face right beside the wires of the cage. And there you are, the parrot, he moves away from the canon's face, goes to the end of the perch and he looks at the canon. And he looks at the canon, and Canon turns up to Barnard. He said, "My God, he said, hasn't he got some colour on him? Oh yes, Bonner said, he's better than the rainbow. And the next minute anyway, the parakeet approaches the cannon right up, halfway up the perch, and he looks straight, dead face into the cannon's eyes, and he opens his mouth, and the next minute, this parrot never spoke in his life, and he says, "Feck the cannon! Feck the cannon! Feck the cannon!" And the cannon falls back on his backside on the floor. He couldn't believe it. Bonner said, "Jesus Christ," he said, "where did that come from?" "Feck the cannon, feck the cannon, feck the cannon, feck the cannon." The parrot kept repeating, "Feck the cannon." There's Dennis and Daniel, the two blokes, they're looking away, but they couldn't restrain themselves from laughing. So anyway, the cannon got up and he walked away. A week later, a register letter comes to Bonner. It's from the cannon. He said, Canon Lane by the name, what's his name? He said, "Mr. Curran," he said, "I object strongly," he said, "to language of that sort, be it from a human being or from an animal." He said, "I would suggest the sooner you get rid of that bird, the better." So anyway, he said, Paddy Mangan, the next time he came back, he had to take the cage and the parrot up to Dublin, and the parrot was in Dublin Zoo for the next 20 years inside the aviary in Dublin, and that's the story of the parrot. But why did the parrot say what he said? While the two boys, every day, every week that they were in on the Thursday, Danny on one side used to whisper, and the cannon had his parrot had his eyes closed, "Feck the cannon," and Danny on the other side, "Feck the cannon." So every Thursday, that cannon had nothing, that parrot had nothing but "Feck the cannon" on the left hand side, "Feck the cannon" on the right hand side. Every Thursday for about 6 or 8 months. They were the only 3 words he ever heard, and they were the only 3 words that parrot ever spoke. That's my story.
Rolling, so as soon as you're ready.
Rather than invented 1, 2 to count 1, 2. Later then, all the numbers.
Sorry about
It's all right, as soon as you're ready.
I've just had a gulp of Guinness and I'm feeling a bit throaty. My next story is about a gentleman by the name of Charlie Troy. He was a carpenter by trade, but also a businessman. So he built the Kingdom Cinema in Carsiveen, and he showed us films every Saturday night, only once a week, Saturday nights. We always looked forward to his films. He used to print a month's notice of what films, and the ones we all liked because we were youngsters were cowboy and Indians, the Western films. I always remember they'd give you the makers in advance, and I always remember 2 names, Douglas Shearer and Sebret Gibbons. If they had anything to do with the films, we always attended because they were the Westerns. In his cinema, he had soft seats for the people with the money, the luxury part of the cinema, 1 shilling and 6pence to go in to see the films. The timber seats with good solid backs were 1 shilling, and then us youngsters, we had the stools right up beside the screen, 4 pence. So all the stools on the Western night, about 8 stools, both sides, were always filled. Some of the films were repeated, and the film I always liked was with John Wayne and Wallace Beery. Now, not many people will remember Wallace Beery, but he was John Wayne's right-hand man. They had a big platoon of army soldiers, trying to quell the Indian uprisings. And Walter Beery, when he died, his son, it took over as a film star. Cut my story short, I got so tired of looking at John Wayne films, I decided that when they left the garrison to go after the Indians, and then they saw the Indians, John Wayne used to always raise his hand up in the air and he'd say, "Yo!" And then they all shot forward. So seconds before John Wayne got up off the saddle on his horse, he'd always say, "Yahoo!" And I always beat him to the punch. So I would make it in such a way that everybody in the cinema got a fit of laughter because I beat John Wayne to the Yahoo! Immediately after my screaming Yahoo, getting a fit of laughter from everybody, Charlie Troy appeared with a lamp. Who put bugger did that and kick him out of here? So he was searching around everywhere, all those stools, because he heard the voice coming from near the screen. And we were all patiently looking, peacefully looking at the screen. Every Western film that John Wayne was on, I was the Yahoo boy. He never found me out, he never caught me out, and to this day, to the present day, he never found out who was the blackguard. And unfortunately, it was me. This is a story about my late wife, Mary O'Sullivan from Valentia Island. It's about her uncle. He was Tim Sullivan, and he came from a place called Upper Liss in South Kerry. Tim was a very, very good footballer. He was working at London Airport, and he had a managerial job at London Airport. So he used to always come up to Fernbank Avenue, pick myself and Mary up and my 4 children, take us down to Hounslow to his house. We always had food, drinks. The generosity was unbounded. His wife was from the county Cork, and they were absolutely adorable people. One night, Tim got a little bit merry, and he was told me a yarn that occurred when he was living back in Upper Liss. He got involved with Bord na Móna. At the time of the war, 1939, fuel was scarce. So in South Kerry, it's all bogland. Tim got involved in cutting turf, saving turf, selling turf to Bord na Móna. The lorry load would be loaded up at the bog side, dry. The load taken to the railway yard in Carsavine. The wagon would be filled. Later on would it be filled, the wagon, but then you had a mound, maybe 6-foot mound of turf on top of the wagon itself, and then the wagon would be shipped up to Kildare, sold to Bord na Móna. Then the boys, once the check came through, they would retire to Miss O'Connell's hotel on Bank Street. The railway was at the bottom of Bank Street, and then people would enjoy the drink, spend some of the money. Tim was a generous man. So one day they were inside in the pub, and a discussion came down as to how, once the wagon was filled and the mound of earth, in other words, the reek, they used to call it reeking, the wagon, you know, it was pretty high. And Tim said to the guys who were working for him, no problem at all, he said. A bloke could stand in the shovel, he said, and I could whip him up, he said, and put him on top of the load. One of them said, there's no way you could do that. From the ground to the top of the wagon, with the reel of turf up the top of the wagon, you're talking about 20 foot. Tim said, no problem to me, he said. I'd put him up on the top, no problem at all. So a bet was laid. Miss O'Connell held the money. Tim put a tenner on the counter. The boys put the tenner on. Miss O'Connell took the money. Back they go. The wagon was there, filled, the reek of turf on top. So he asked Quirk, the smallest man of his crew, stand in the shovel. And it was a coal shovel, not an ordinary shovel. It was a big coal shovel. The bloke stands on the coal shovel anyway. Tim takes off the coat, takes off the shirt, and just had the vest on. Gets his right hand down, left hand, swings, and he takes Quirk straight up, unfortunately, way up over the bloody wagon and the rake. Quirk goes down the other side, broken collarbone, twisted leg. Straight away, no ambulance in those days. Straight away to Tralee, 42 miles away, broken collarbone, twisted leg. Anyway, he sues poor old Tim for 300 quid. So Tim settled out of court. He said he gave him the money. He said that was the last time Tim used a coal shovel. Now, normally we Kerry people like our priests to come from Kerry. Since that O'Connell Memorial Church was built, we had all Kerry priests. It didn't matter to us whether they came from Killarney, Listowel, Cashel Island, Ballylongford. It didn't matter as long as they were Kerry. However, this is unfortunate. I did mention about the parrot. That Cannon Lane, he was not a Kerry man. He had a slight accent of Dublin. However, when he was asked what county was he from, he refused to give us the information. So, my story now is about Canon Moynihan, who was from the north of Kerry. He was a man of 20 stone. He was so nice and so likeable. He always had a smile in his face, and he always, like me, told a good story. However, he had one weakness, and his weakness was he was very fond of money. Every Sunday, that Canon Moynihan, he was in the front of the gate, the two big gates with two big pillars. He always stood behind him. You had the two collectors, John Drummy on one side and his brother Seamus Drummy on the other side. They had collection boxes, and these collection boxes, you just dropped in your contribution, your donation to the church for the week before you went into the church for Mass. And there was a slide. They opened the slide, pop your money in, then they closed the slide. So nobody knew what they gave, not even the drummies. Canon Moynihan was trying to find out, who was giving what, but the drummies knew the crack, so they didn't allow him to see. There was a gentleman by the name of Code Garvey. He lived 3 miles away from the church in a place called the White Strand. Now there was a white bridge to go over the River Ferta, and anybody living the other side of the White Bridge, all we would say, where were they from? Over the water. So no matter whatever part of they came from, they were from over the water. Poor old Code used to come with his donkey and car religiously every Sunday, tie his donkey up at the railings outside the library, the CYMS building, and then trot as bad as he could down in the main gate, take the cap off, and good morning, Canon. Good morning, Mr. Garvey. You're a bit late today. Your Code never made it for 12 o'clock. Well, he said, well, it's like this, Canon, he said, I'm getting old. The old donkey is getting old as well. Well, come out a bit earlier. The Canon said, I like my parishioners to be in time for Mass. I'll do my best, Canon, I'll do my best. Now, when the Canon was there, Code had a waistcoat. On the left-hand side, the pocket, he had a threepenny bit, and on the right-hand side, he had a sixpenny bit. So Code used to say to himself, if the Canon is there, I'll have to give him a greyhound, which was the tanner. But if the Canon was missing, he'd put in a threepenny bit, which was either a rabbit or a hare. It was always debatable. But all our kinds in those days, they had the harp on one side and an animal on the other. The half a crown had a horse, the shilling had a bull, and as I said, the sixpence had a tanner, the threepenny bit had a wren, and believe it or not, we had a penny and even a farthing. I can't remember what animals they were. This Sunday, Code is driving, just crossing the bridge, and here the bell's going. The bell was ringing. The bell was ringing. So he couldn't figure out why the bell was ringing. Anyway, he gets to the railing, ties up the donkey, gives him the sop of hay. He's walking down, he's got the two hands in the pocket. Will it be a tanner? Will it be a threepenny bit? My contribution. So remember what I said, Drummy's at one pillar, Seamus is at the other. John at one pillar, Seamus Drummy at the other pillar. Those two pillars, they were really, really big pillars. The gates opened. Code arrives about 12, waiting for a scolding from Canon Minahan. Anyway, round he comes, no cannon. He looks at both Drummies, no cannon. So he took the hand out of the tanner pocket, puts the hand into the threepenny pocket, and as he just putting the threepenny bit into Seamus' collection box, he turns around, he says, John Dromey, he said, where is the goalie today? If you think about it, two pillars, he said, where is the goalie today? So they said to him, did you hear the bell ringing? Yes, he said, I did. And he said, it's St. Patrick's Day, it's the 17th of March. The only time it's fallen on a Sunday. Well, they said, Code, we're sorry to have to tell you, the canon died last night. Would you believe it? 3 weeks later, Code Garvey followed the canon. That's my story.
The goalie. The goalie. Yes.
Well, with all these stories I've been telling, believe it or not, I'm still on my first pint. But these are worth telling. My sister Mary was courted for about 10 years by a bloke by the name of Batty Sheehan. His father was a wealthy man. He lived in Waterville, an auctioneer and businessman. He gave the Ivara stores in Carsavine to his son Bat. And my sister Mary was a young girl, worked in the store. However, he had a brother by the name of Tommy Sheehan, and he was a qualified dentist in the town of Carsavine. My mother came back from England as a qualified nurse with 6 letters after her name, SRN, State Registered Nurse, and she was also a midwife for the whole of South Kerry. I cannot recall what those 3 letters were, but she was a fully qualified midwife. When I was about 17 years of age, I got some disease in my mouth. So all my teeth, my upper teeth, had to be extracted. So she made an appointment with Tommy Sheehan that I had to have my teeth seen to. I go up to Tommy Sheehan's dentist on the church road, and he invites me in, sit on his chair, and he looks at my mouth and he said to me, you got to get all your teeth out. So he was left-handed. He put the injection, did what he had to do, waited for 15, 20 minutes. My mouth was numb. He took out the 9 teeth. I can always remember with his left hand. He worked with his left hand. Anyway, a little blood formed around my mouth and my chin and went down along my neck, and he said to me, hang on a minute. So on the corner of the room, he had his washing facilities, and I always remember on the handle of the chair I was sitting on, he had an apparatus with a glass, and the glass was about ½ size. He whipped the glass up, went to the washing area, comes back with the glass full of some kind of liquid, red in colour, that fizzled. He handed me the glass and he said to me, take that. He goes back, his back to me, he starts washing his hands. So he said to me, take that. So I did, I drank it. So I drank it anyway, and after I drinking it, I didn't feel very well, so I got up off the chair and I fell to the floor. His back was to me, so he turned around, he saw me lying on the floor. So he went over, picked me up, put me back in the chair. He said, you all right? I said, no, I'm not. I said, I don't feel well. He said, where's the rinse? I said, what rinse? He said, the glass that I gave you. I said, you told me to take that. I said, I took it, I drank it. You bloody fool, he said, that was to rinse your mouth. So he said, he gave me another one. So I said, I rinsed my mouth and I threw it out. So he gave me tissues. He had an old bucket, he said, throw the tissues in there. Use some flour, you are.
Very good, Dad.
So,
Very good.
so that finishes my episode with Tommy, but then getting back to Batty Sheehan anyway, his mate was Cheyenne Healy, and he was an auctioneer in the town of Carshameen. Those two boys, they had money when nobody else had money. My sister Mary was working for Bat in the Everard stores. This particular, again Thursday afternoon, Batty and Cheyenne, they went on the old drink. Anyway, they went down to the point, Ned Nails. As you all go across the Village Island, they tanked up with as much drink as they could, drove back to town. Cheyenne had a car. Both of them got out of the car, fell out of the car both sides. And lo and behold, a guy comes in from Waterville who was never liked. He was not a South Kerry man. What nationality he was, I do not know. But he always wore a big, large hat. This was the month of June. Thursday afternoon, the guy never bought anything, but he was always a shop window man. Up he goes anyway to West Main Street. On the right hand side was C.J. Sheehan's, a big hardware store, two big bay windows, and he had a habit of standing outside the store looking at the right-hand bay window. The doors were closed Thursday afternoon, half day in the town of Carshameen, then went to left-hand window. As Cheyenne gets out of the car, Bat gets out the other side, they're all out, the two of them. Chad says to Bat, look at that bugger up there, he said, never buys a goddamn thing, he said. I bet you a fiver, he said, you don't take the hat off his head. Bat looks at him, he said, no problem, he said, wait till I get the gun. In he goes anyway, brings out the .303, puts his hand in his pocket, takes out the bullet into the chamber, locks it up. Chad said, hang on a minute, fivers on the table, 2 fivers out of the 2 pockets, on the floor. So Bat goes up, good, I'd say 70 yards from the Everard stores to C.J. Sheehan's window. This guy sitting outside with his big fancy hat. Nobody ever liked him. So anyway, Bat is leaning up against the pillar of the Everard store. Cheyenne said, no, bet is off, bet's off. So Bat said, why? He said, you have a hand, he said, you got 5 from the shoulder. He said, no support by the pillar, he said. And Batty's staggering all over the place. He said, no, he said, Bat's up. Okay, he said, I'll take him out, he said, I'll take that hat off his head, he said, no problem, he said. So Batty staggers out, he tries to lean up the car. Cheyenne said, no, from the shoulder, he said, I'll only say it once more. Right, he said, from the shoulder. Batty goes up from the shoulder, looks through the 2 sides, takes aim, steadies himself, takes a big breath, lets go. The bullet goes straight through one side of the hat, straight through the other, straight through the window. Hat straight through the window crashes around, glass flying everywhere. Bloke falls back. The 2 boys anyway said, Batty picks up his tenner, he said, well, he said, you can go home now, he said. He goes in, Mary's inside, she can't believe it, my sister, she can't believe it. The father hears about it. The guy from Waterville, he said, goes to see Pat's father, he said, that man, he said, could have shot me, could have killed me. So the father said, oh, he said, he's the best marksman, he said, in the whole of South Kerry. He said, unless I get £300, he said, from you or from Pat, he said, you'll get it from me. The father gave him the £300. He went to Carsavine, he said to Batty, give me the keys of that shop. He said, you're for England, mate. He said, you're out. Batty disappeared, left Mary, went away up to England. But in the meantime, Mary then, because she had no job, she went to England and she did the same thing as my mother did. She became a nurse. They both married in England and they lived happily ever after. That all right? And finally, my last story will be in song. My late brother John had a great friend, and his name was Sigerson Clifford. There is actually a statue of Sigerson Clifford, a bust statue of Sigerson Clifford outside the old post office, which is now closed, adjacent to the library. He went to Dublin on a clerical examination result, never happy while he was in Dublin, so he wrote to my brother John the following poem, and somebody put it to music. Whether I've got the right ear or not, I don't know. However, I shall try and do a rendering of it to conclude my stories today. Baranastrada is the name of the song. That's where Sigerson Clifford came from. Baranastrada translated means top street. It goes like this. Oh, the town, it climbs the mountain and looks upon the sea. In waiting time or sleeping, it's there I long to be. To walk again those kindly streets where first my life began. With the boys of Baranastrada who hunted for the ran. With cudgel stout we roamed about to herd the small droline. We searched for birds in every forest, from letter to Dooneen. We jumped for joy beneath a skylight, held no print or plan. We were boys from Baranastrada who hunted for the ran. So here's a hail to them tonight, the lads who laughed with me. Round the shores of Carn River and the slopes of Benetee, John Daly and Ben Handy and the Sheens, Con and Dan were once boys in Baranastrada who hunted for the ran. Hi, no, I'm not finished. No, hold it. They're clapping already. Fan the fall. But now they toil on foreign soil, where they have gone their way. Deep in the heart of London town and over on Broadway. and I'm left to sing their deeds and praise them while I can. Those boys from Barnesrada who hunted for the wren. And when the wheel of life runs out and sleeps comes over me, just lay me down in that old town between the hills and sea. I'll take my sleep 'neath those green fields where first my life began, with the boys of Barnesrada who hunted for the wren. Oh yes, I'll take my sleep 'neath those green fields where first I grew a man, with the boys of Barnesrada who hunted for the wren. Now you can clap. That's it.
No, that's my awful writing. That is.
Anyway, I'll remove my phone. Right. Okay then. So
I'm chatting away.
Yeah, try and get me drawing.
Can you do? You have got a drawer, haven't you?
I
But
got
natural. Just.
he's the one who's been on camera all day. The two of you are the most vain.